It's how war zones look when the fighting stops. The Red Cross patrolling the scorched earth, tending to survivors. Every day, medical teams visit victims like Zacharias Konstantakis, still living in his ravaged home.
Προσέχετε τώρα με τα γύμνα πόδια.
Και πήγα εκεί στο παράθυρο. Λες και να γινόταν μάχη. Μπουμ, μπουμ. Είχαν γεμάτο γκαζάκια.
Έχετε την καλοσύνη να βγάλουμε.
Greeks take immense pride in pulling together in times of crisis. The 84-year-old Air Force veteran raced over burning bitumen that melted his shoes to bring 2 children to safety.
Εδώ να με βούτυξα και το ένα δεν είσαι νάση. Δεν είσαι ο παπάς μου, δεν είσαι ο παπάς μου. Και το βουτάω από τα μαλλιά και τ' άλλο το βουτάω έτσι, αλλά με πλάκωσε ο καπνός.
Φοβηθήκατε στις φωτιές.
Εγώ,
Αφού ήσουν στα παιδιά.
σας λέω, δεν φοβάμαι τίποτα.
Καλημέρα!
Every home, every family here has a story of survival.
Δεν σας φυρίξαμε, μη σας τρομάξουμε.
Άναψε για τον προβολέα.
Elias Karvanopoulos nearly died riding his motorbike through flames to find and rescue his mother. How is your mother now?
Fine.
Και χαιρόμαστε πολύ γι' αυτό.
I will try to fix my house and the place. I will put some trees, something like that. I'm alive, so I'll keep going. I feel very lucky. Very, very lucky. It was a small paradise. Now it's a colossus.
Hell.
Hell, yes.
Today, it's hard to imagine that this was Athens' seaside escape, a haven for retirees, tourists, and the Greek diaspora. Most thought they were safe from fire. In Greek, Marti means eye, as in eye of the north wind. It blows almost incessantly on shore. But for days, the Bureau of Meteorology had warned of unusual wind in the opposite direction, sweeping down from the hills to the coast. On the morning of July 23rd, many of Marti's firefighting resources were sent to a blaze 60 kilometres away. But at 4:49 p.m, a second fire broke out in the hills above Marti. It was more than 2 hours before a fire brigade helicopter was diverted to drop water. Unit Commander Yorgos Antonakopoulos says by then the wind speed was more than 100 kilometres per hour.
Κοιτώντας τη μια στιγμή αριστερά, έβλεπες τη φωτιά και την άλλη στιγμή, μέχρι να ξανακοιτάσεις, η σκοτώνη είχε περάσει το σημείο που κοίταζες.
It was already too late. The fire had reached the coast. Suddenly, residents and day trippers were surrounded by smoke and flames. The roads were soon gridlocked, then blocked by burning cars. The only hope of escape was the sea.
Yes, many people died here. They tried to jump, like one girl tried to jump from the cliff.
Schoolteacher Maria Dezelli lives on the waterfront, but even she feared she'd die. Marti is built on cliffs with few paths to the water and almost none are marked. So you had to get in the water, but there's fire all around you.
Yes, fire there, there,
3 on fire
everywhere.
there, 3 on fire
And,
over there. Okay, so you knew that there was that path
Yes,
down to the beach?
I know.
Because you're a local.
Because I live here, that's why I live here.
But other people, visitors, they had no idea how to get down.
They had no idea.
Despite having a dangerous heart condition, she managed to reach the stairs with her husband and son and climb down to the beach. So how many people were sheltering here on this beach?
Well, around 30 people.
30? It's a small area.
Yes, we were like sardines here.
Yeah. Did you feel safe once you were down here?
No, of course not.
So how many hours were you? You came in here about 6:30?
5 hours.
You were here 5 hours
Yes.
waiting to be picked up?
Yes, we were here 5 hours. And people were crying here, people were asking for their families, there were mothers crying for their children. It was a chaos here.
But over there we can see the port at Rufina where the tourist ferries come and go from the Greek islands.
Yes.
Could you call the port authority?
Of course we called them. We had our mobiles. We called them again and again, and we called our families to inform them. But they didn't do anything.
So who finally rescued you?
Just a small fishing boat coming from Nea Makri.
A private fishing boat?
Yes, a private.
How
But
did-
he couldn't reach here because, as you can see, there are big rocks here and it's a very dangerous beach. So
You had to
swim.
You had to swim out in that?
We had to swim
200 meters.
meters, you know, to reach the boat.
In the dark.
In the dark.
With the smoke after hours and hours.
Yes.
Almost 700 people were eventually picked up by a flotilla of small boats and the Coast Guard. Many drowned or died of burns as they waited. This small community gathers in a church that was somehow spared by the inferno to farewell nearly 100 loved ones. It is 40 days since the disaster. In the Orthodox faith, it's when the souls of the dead rise to heaven. Andreas Dimitriou was one of the firemen battling the blaze. As soon as he heard the flames were near his home, he raced back to try to save his family. He found his wife, Margarita, dying by the water's edge. She was alongside the body of their 6-month-old son.
Ήταν η απόλυτη καταστροφή. Ζω την απόλυτη καταστροφή από εκείνη τη μέρα και μετά. Όχι μόνο εγώ, και οι γονείς της και γενικά όλη η οικογένειά μου. Είναι κάτι το οποίο δεν μπορείς να το δεχτείς εύκολα. Είναι κάτι το οποίο δεν το αντέχεις εύκολα. Είναι κάτι το οποίο εύχεσαι να μην το ζήσει κανένας άνθρωπος, ούτε ο εχθρός σου.
This all happened in the midst of a horror Northern Hemisphere summer, with heat waves and fires in the Arctic, deadly infernos in Japan and North America, temperatures off the charts across Europe. But Greece was the exception. This was an unusually mild summer with far more rain than normal. This was not a fire linked to climate change. It could have happened any summer. The authorities knew that. They just weren't ready for it. So how did the Greek government and its emergency services fail so comprehensively? I've come to Greece's most prestigious research centre to meet the one man who may have answers.
Welcome. Welcome to the Academy. Come in.
Amazing building.
The Academy was founded...
Costas Synolakis is a crisis management expert and a member of the Academy of Athens. He was commissioned by an opposition party to interview survivors and piece together what went wrong.
I was incredibly surprised and shocked by the stories of the people and what happened. There was absolutely no pre-planning. In Greece, there is no culture of planning for big public emergencies. Most people, including the government, are in complete denial. These things don't happen here.
One of his most disturbing discoveries was that police had directed cars into Marti, believing the coastal highway behind the town would act as a fire break.
And they had diverted traffic to the smaller streets, which in effect blocked and created a gridlock. So even the people who tried to evacuate from the smaller streets, they couldn't. And other people who had absolutely nothing to do with Marti, who didn't live there, they were actually diverted into harm's way. That made absolutely no sense.
Even more surprising were the actions of the Coast Guard. It not only failed to send rescue boats in time, for hours it allowed tourist ferries to continue arriving.
The Coast Guard did not stop ferries, coming in the port of Rafina, which is very close, which was, again, a horrible mistake because ferries unload a lot of cars. This adds to the traffic load. You do not, at that moment, you do not want to have more cars on the road. You want to have the roads open as possible because you want to move traffic away. You do not want to bring in more traffic from ferries that are coming in. Where is the government in all of this? I mean, the number one responsibility of any government is protecting its citizens. This is the number one responsibility. Everything else comes second. And here, the government failed completely.
Weeks on, survivors are demanding the government pay for what happened.
Λοιπόν, επειδή μου έχουν κάψει το σπίτι μου, βρίσκομαι εδώ. Τώρα πώς δεν κάηκα και εγώ δεν ξέρω.
It's a restrained crowd compared to the usual protesters. Anarchists hurling Molotov cocktails have been a regular feature here since the economy collapsed in 2009. These middle-class victims are doubtful they'll get more help. Their protest is ignored by the crowds of tourists here for the changing of the guard. They fear politicians just want them to go away. This was actually meant to be a night of celebrations here at the Parliament because this is the official end of the 8-year bailout, the program of multi-billion-dollar loans from the IMF and EU in return for Greece reforming its economy, tightening its belt, cutting wages and pensions. It's meant to be a milestone symbolising a new beginning for Greece. But for many, the fire is the real symbol of what Greece has become after 8 years of enforced austerity. The marks of Greece's long economic crisis are etched into the streets of Athens. 500,000 people from a population of 11 million have moved abroad in search of jobs. They've left behind a nation crippled by debt, now running at 180% of GDP. Record numbers of foreign tourists are coming in for a cheap dose of antiquity and sunshine, but austerity will rule the streets for years, stripping the resources of citizens and their state. Yorgos Statharkas was economics minister in the left-wing Syriza government that swept to power 3 years ago. How much has society been hurt by those 8 years of enforced austerity?
I think it has been hurt more than any other society, with the exceptions of world wars. That is, we had the largest reduction of GDP, 25%. That's a huge reduction in times of peace. We had 40% decline of average incomes, wages, salaries, pensions. So the cost was huge.
Emergency services have been hit as hard as any. Firefighters have had wages steadily cut. They even have to buy their own uniforms. This unit is based in a complex that was the pride of the 2004 Athens Olympics. They weren't called out until 9 p.m, long after the fire had destroyed the town. Dimitris Stathopoulos is a senior fire officer and president of the Firefighters Union. He says 10 of the station's 15 trucks are out of action.
This fire car, 43 χρονών αμάξι.
42 years old, 43 years old, and still being used.
This 2004 Olympic Games. Olympic Games.
Right, from the Olympic Games.
Από τότε έχουμε να πάρουμε αμάξια στην Αττική. Από το 2004 δεν έχουμε πάρει καινούριο αμάξι στην Αττική.
And you have trucks that aren't working now?
Αυτή τη στιγμή πανελλαδικά θα σας πω εγώ, όχι μόνο στο σταθμό, το 15% των αμαξιών είναι εκτός λειτουργίας και άλλο ένα 15% των υδροφόρων περιοδιστικών οχημάτων μπαινοβγαίνει στα συνεργεία διότι είναι σε έλλειψη ανταλλακτικών, ελαστικών και διάφορες τέτοιες λειτουργίες.
He says the national firefighting budget has been cut by 20% since 2010.
Όταν μειώνεται ο εξοπλισμός μας, όταν μειώνονται τα αμάξι μας, δεν μπορούμε να αποδώσουμε κι εμείς τις δυνατότητές μας.
The blame game started even before Marty stopped smouldering. The heads of the National Police and Fire Brigade were sacked. The Minister for Public Order resigned. Some claim that's not enough, that politicians and EU officials have blood on their hands. Zoe Konstantopoulou was Syriza's Speaker of Parliament and a close ally of Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras until they split over austerity cuts.
I think it's very, very clear that austerity measures imposed upon our country have led not just to misery and suffering, but also to deaths. When you remove sovereignty from a country, when you demand that an illegal debt is repaid by the blood of the people, because this is what has been happening. We've been paying with our own blood for a debt that they created. And when I say they, I am talking about the governments, the Greek governments, but also the European governments, the creditors' governments, and the German and French banks, which were those responsible for the larger part of Greece's so-called current debt.
Whether there would have been a better outcome if the, under different circumstances without the austerity, it's hard to say.
Professor Synolakis insists cutbacks were no excuse for the lack of planning or coordination. He believes they had enough large water-bombing aircraft to slow the blaze, they just didn't send them in time.
I think certainly if we had, and what my research shows, is that if we had firefighting aircraft operational, it would have delayed the spread of the fire by at least an hour and a half, some models even say 2. But I will take just the absolute minimum that I found, an hour. An hour would have been enough to, if you had had an evacuation, to have saved a lot of people.
It wasn't just the failings on the day that killed so many, it was government policies stretching back decades. Of all the terrible sights here, this unremarkable property that's now sealed off is the most awful. Because a crowd of people came running through here trying to get to the sea, and blinded by smoke, they found themselves trapped at the edge with no escape. 26 people, including parents and their young children, died in each other's arms. Allegations would later emerge that the property and fence should not have been there. Like many waterfront homes, it was built without permission on public land.
This is a unique phenomenon in Southern Europe where a lot of beach areas were sort of developed in the 60s and the 70s without planning. Once the houses are built and the fences are there, then the government comes in and builds roads. I mean, it's reverse, unfortunately, the wrong way of going about this.
Illegal construction was tolerated in part because the builders paid heavy fines and taxes, income desperately needed in the financial crisis.
Let me be also very, very clear. This government, which is trying to blame it on those illegal houses, was the government who voted in 2017 a law to legalize all illegal constructions. So it's really, you know, we're in really an Orwellian environment, I would say, where the wolf is trying to pretend he's a sheep, and where the government is trying to say that it's day outside while it's night.
The first demolitions of fire-damaged houses, many riddled with asbestos, are staged as a media event. The government now says it will demolish more than 3,000 homes built illegally on beachfronts and in forests.
Σειρά από παθογένειες που υπήρχαν για χρόνια και στο χωροταξικό και πολεοδομικό σχεδιασμό, στην άναρχη δόμηση, στο ότι δεν υπάρχουν επαρκείς οδεύσεις διαφυγής.
Greece's infrastructure minister, Costas Synolakis, concedes austerity has affected fire readiness. But he argues this fire was so extreme, no amount of technology could have stopped it.
Είναι προφανές ότι τα φαινόμενα ήταν ακραία, είχαν ανέμους πάνω από 120 χιλιόμετρα, όπως είναι και δεδομένο ότι η οικονομική κρίση δεν έχει αφήσει τόσο την τοπική αυτοδιοίκηση όσο και τις κρίσιμες υπηρεσίες της χώρας να είναι και επαρκώς τελεχωμένες, αλλά να έχουν και την κατάλληλη ηλεκτροτεχνική υποδομή. Επομένως, είχαμε μία σειρά και από χρόνιες παθογένειες, αλλά και από συγκυρίες που οδήγησαν στην τραγωδία που ζήσαμε.
It's been a humiliation for a country that prides itself on being a cradle of civilization. Greece didn't just give the world democracy. In mythology, its gods brought forth fire. Murals in the Academy of Athens tell the legend of Prometheus, who defied Zeus to give the light of fire and learning to the people.
Zeus forgives Prometheus, and Hercules goes in and frees him from the mountain. But I don't think in this particular case Zeus is going to forgive the people who are responsible for what happened in Mati.
Like everyone in this tight-knit community, Ilias Kavanopolis, who we met earlier with the Red Cross, is trying to come to terms with the loss. A former DJ, he was famous for his parties on his homemade sound system.
Music is my life. I built this house to look like a disco, to look like a club.
But 10 of his friends died in the flames. Music has become his salvation.
They will listen music upstairs. They will come. Yes, I think I want that. I will feel that they will be with us. The bad memories we have to forget. We have to live. I need too much to laugh, to make jokes. I want that.
In the backyard of the fireman Andreas Dimitriou's home, there's a shrine for his wife Margarita and the son they hadn't yet named.
Νιώθω πολλά αισθήματα. Θυμό ακόμα δεν έχω νιώσει, από την άποψη ότι δεν ξέρω με ποιον να θυμώσω. Να θυμώσω με το Θεό, να θυμώσω με τους ανθρώπους, να θυμώσω με τον εαυτό μου, να θυμώσω... Ακόμα δεν έχω νιώσει θυμό, γιατί δεν ξέρω σε ποιον να απευθύνω το θυμό μου. Όλα τα άλλα τα συναισθήματα τα ζω κάθε μέρα έντονα, εκτός από το θυμό. Μέχρι στιγμής τουλάχιστον.
The blackened landscape is a daily reminder of the catastrophe that took them from him. Still in deep shock, he somehow finds the strength to carry on.
Well, what of your future? Are you going to continue to be a firefighter?
Ναι. Είναι η δουλειά που για μένα δεν ήταν ποτέ δουλειά. Ήταν προσφορά, είναι λειτουργήμα. Είναι κάτι που η Μαργαρίτα θαύμαζε σε μένα και αυτό που κάνω και θα συνεχίσω να το κάνω.
All are determined this Greek tragedy will never happen again.